All right, hello. This lecture is going to be a review of yesterday's lecture, which was on how the U.S. invasion of Iraq caused both the creation of the insurgency in Iraq and the formation of ISIS, ultimately. All right, I showed you how this occurred through this diagram, and we'll do a quick review. All right, so now after the U.S. had undermined and sabotaged UN WMD inspections for 7 years, I showed you exactly how that was done through Scott Ritter's book. All right, and then after the U.S. had intentionally manufactured the false perception within the U.S. public that Saddam was lying and concealing WMD, even after they're trying to sabotage the inspections. The Bush administration then used WMD, which were actually eliminated from Iraq since 1991, along with the 9/11 attacks, which were actually conducted by Al Qaeda and not Iraq, used those two false things to justify the invasion of Iraq war, and it worked. Americans fell for it. Then they conducted a meticulously planned strategy using the anniversary of 9/11 to conduct a bait and switch, right? Taking all the fear, terror, and horror generated by the Al Qaeda attack on 9/11 and dumping that on Iraq. In conjunction with the election in November, to get leverage, to get congressmen and senators to vote for a congressional resolution authorizing the use of military force in Iraq, which is carte blanche, blank check to war. All right. Then, once we got the war, every U.S. policy in Iraq appears to be designed to create conflict and chaos. The Bush policy is either ridiculously stupid or, I hate to say it, but, it could be intentional. Right? How do you screw everything up this perfectly? All right, so first of all, it was utterly predictable that the U.S. invasion of Iraq would ignite an insurgency that would spark a guerrilla warfare, and that would cause urban guerrilla warfare that would cause massive civilian casualties. Right? It would also ignite a sectarian civil war with Shia and Sunni, fighting each other, conducting terrorism against each other. It would destroy the regional balance of power, especially vis-a-vis Iran. And it would exacerbate Sunni-Shia conflict throughout the region, destabilizing the Middle East. And it would greatly increase radical jihadist movement worldwide. All right? I predicted all this during the first Gulf War. It didn't take a genius. It didn't take a rocket scientist. All right, all it took was common sense. All right, now the U.S. invasion of an oil-rich Muslim country radicalized Muslims around the world. All right, increased and recruiting for Al Qaeda and the terrorists. So it was super anti-strategic. All right, now one of the things the Bush administration did, in fact, the first coalition provisional authority order number one, was de-Baathification. It destroyed livelihoods. It created upheaval. It tore the Iraqi social fabric. Right? Party membership was required just to get a job over there, and that helped kill the economy. De-Baathification and elimination of government expertise. Running the government, the administration, and running the infrastructure. You name it, from water, whatever, power, transportation, everything. All the infrastructure thrown in chaos, right? Creating social upheaval, whacking the economy, right? And then Coalition Provisional Authority order number two was eliminate the Iraqi army, military, destroying their livelihoods, destroying their careers, taking away their pensions. All right, this fueling the insurgency. These guys no longer had a job, no longer had opportunity, right? They still had access to the weapons because the U.S. didn't secure the weapons. So they got their weapons and they fought, right? That's what fueled the insurgency. Now, is that what the media told you? No. The media kept harping on, oh, every attack is Al-Qaeda or a group related to Al-Qaeda. All right? I hate the media. All right. So then you have destruction in Iraq with all the urban warfare. Cities destroyed, the economy destroyed, the fabric of their society destroyed. Right? We create chaos. Now, also the U.S. invasion takes out the central authority. So there's a power vacuum. This unleashes sectarian civil war. You got daily Sunni versus Shia terrorism every damn day. The U.S. invasion ignites an insurgency. It's nasty urban warfare on U.S. boys. Plus, that's going to cause much collateral damage, resulting in over 185,000 civilian deaths during this war. Right? That fuels hatred. That radicalizes more Muslims around the world. Increases the influx of foreign fighters into Iraq, right? Fueling the insurgency, and that creates Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Right? Al-Qaeda in Iraq was an excuse for the Bush administration to invade, but they're near non-existent prior to the war. The big irony is, it was Bush's invasion of Iraq which fueled the creation of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, right? And that then led to the formation of ISIS. Al-Qaeda in Iraq morphed into, eventually, ISIS. All right. Now, I know Americans going to say, no, U.S. wasn't responsible for ISIS. That's crazy. Oh, get real. Get honest. All right. Sanction and support the Shia militia. That's what the Bush administration did. And Rumsfeld handpicks Colonel Steele. This guy right here. In the 1980s, this guy was they pick him as American liaison to the Shia militia. Right? In the 1980s, he ran the mobile training team in El Salvador. All right? And in El Salvador, they taught the extreme, brutal, heavy-handed, take off the gloves, counterinsurgency methods involving kidnap off the street, rendition, torture, murder, and including death squads. All right? I mean, in Latin America, whole villages were getting whacked. It was bloody. Okay. This was taught in country by this guy. It was also taught in the USA, in Fort Benning, Georgia, at the School of Americas. Right? They taught the same counterinsurgency techniques. All right. Now, then, let's see here. So the Shia then used U.S. counterinsurgency methods, kidnap, torture, murder, death squads, and toss tortured bodies of dead Sunni men, holes drilled in their bodies, right? Tossed in the street every day, And again, I talked to a number of Iraq War veterans, and they said, yeah, right? These Sunni bodies were showing up daily, right? In the street, all messed up, holes drilled in them, right? And, you think that's going to intimidate these guys? That's going to pacify them? I tell you what, that's going to backfire. That's going to fuel hatred, all right? It's not going to pacify them, make them cowardly. It's going to overcome their fear with hate. And I say backfire, just like 9/11 backfired, all right? The terrorists thought they were going to weaken America, hurt America with 9/11. They only strengthened America. They thought they were going to get the Americans to stay out of the Middle East. They only gave Americans a false excuse to go into Iraq, right? Bush administration manipulated the 9/11 attacks by Al-Qaeda to justify an invasion of Iraq, who had nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks, right? I give me as an example. How they tortured me, right? I was tortured bad for 2 years. And after that, they hunted me down for years, all right? Did it get me to stop? No. You screw up my body so bad. What do I got to lose? Right? You pushed me to suicide attempts 3 times. You think I'm afraid of dying? Right? You want me to stop? You're gonna have to kill me. All right. Now, the CIA and the Bush administration also selected and supported al-Maliki for the first presidential election. Right? Now, who was al-Maliki? He was the leader of the Dawa group, right? Terrorist group in Iraq, supported by Iran, directed by Iran, right? Strong ties to Iran, including, in fact, strong ties directly to the Quds Force, led by General Suleiman, right? The leader of the Quds Force, notorious guy, right? And Maliki is a fierce anti-Sunni. He has harsh anti-Sunni policies. He helped fuel the sectarian violence. All right, so in addition to that, the U.S. sets up these detention centers, all right, and then the Bush, in conjunction with that, the Bush administration authorizes humiliation and torture. All right. Now they're going to say, no, we didn't authorize torture. Man, they authorized. You know, they legalized every bit of torture. How? They said nothing's torture unless they die, or their organs fail and they die. Right. So in a sense, they legalized every bit of torture. Right. Nothing is torture unless they die. All right. And they justified by saying, oh, they're all terrorists. Were they terrorists or were they insurgents? Were they part of the resistance to U.S. invasion and occupation? And if so, were they freedom fighters? All right. I'm saying, you know, if here in America we get invaded by someone, some country, all right, you're gonna fight. All right. I would. And then how would I consider myself? Would I say, oh, I'm a terrorist? Hell no. I'd say I'm a freedom fighter. I'm fighting against the damn invaders. All right. And on top of that, a lot of these guys, I'm not sure how many exactly, but you know, there's quite a bit of stories where these guys were innocent, falsely accused. All right. I told you how that whole thing worked. People were, you know, the U.S. sets up a system where people use the U.S. as their hitmen, right, to knock off their enemies. All right. Also, the insurgents themselves would accuse innocent people. Why? To shift focus off themselves, to protect themselves. All right. Now, then you know, into these detention centers, you throw together ex-Iraqi military with the radical fundamentalist jihadists, right? Right? And these guys, you know, were enemies. Well, then you humiliate them, you torture them. Well, they join forces. So enemies with the military and the intelligence hunting down this Salafist, ultra-conservative, religious extremists, right? Now they've joined forces. And together they organize and they form ISIS, right? Especially in Camp Buchan, where the majority of ISIS leaders came from. All right. So is that strategic or is that anti-strategic? A fundamental strategy, age-old, is called divide and conquer. All right? Everyone knows that. Right? Anyone with half a brain should know that. Now, what do we do? Did we do divide and conquer? No, we did anti-divide and conquer. We took enemies and brought them together as our enemy. All right. Now, the U.S. invasion of Iraq formed ISIS. All right. Inspired Zarqawi to go to Iraq. And then he forms a group to fight the U.S. invasion called Monotheism and Jihad. Right. In 2003. And in 2004, he renames it Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And then he renames Al-Qaeda in Iraq the Mujahideen Shura Council. And then Zarqawi is killed in June of 2006. But shortly after that, in October, Mujahideen Shura Council is renamed Islamic State. And then when they take over territory in Iraq and Syria, they're renamed Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And that's how ISIS formed. All right. Now, a lot of people point to Obama, right? And I'm saying these guys are too bright, you know, right? But yeah, I tell you, it's very common. right? They say, oh, Obama created ISIS. Oh, my ass, right? ISIS formed back here, 2003, right? This is the progression, right? And they say, no, it was Obama's pullout. Well, first of all, that's not true at all. ISIS formed with the U.S. invasion of Iraq, right? The origin of ISIS is in that. And then Obama didn't even order the 2011 pullout, all right? That was due to George W. Bush treaty signed with the Iraqi government in 2008. I forget when it was, like October or something, 2008, right? So he signed it. It was called the Status of Forces Treaty, which the United States promised to pull out troops by December of 2011, and Obama just fulfilled that. Now, he had to fulfill that. What if Obama didn't abide by this treaty, broke a treaty, right? That's tantamount to another U.S. invasion of a foreign country, a sovereign foreign country. We're recognizing the government of Iraq, and we're breaking that treaty to remove our troops. That's essentially the same thing as invasion, right? You know that's going to spark another fight, another insurgency. All right, so 6 weeks after the 9/11 attacks, the neocons had planned to take down 7 nations in 5 years: Iraq, Syria, Libya, Iran, Sudan, Somalia, and Lebanon, right? Now, we took down Iraq, right? We definitely helped take down Libya militarily. U.S. military effort, along with the United Nations, led by the French, right? There was a big French interest here in Libya and West Africa, especially with the French franc, right? And we also supported, U.S. agency supported the Arab Spring, right? Taking down Syria. Now, these are destabilized, and they're failed states, allowing for ISIS to take a foothold, right? And then here's the thing. After we defeated ISIS, and I wrote a strategy to defeat ISIS. I didn't teach that yet. I think I will eventually, once I organize my thoughts. And now, one of the things that happened is the U.S. allowed convoys to escape. And I would never have allowed this. Now, these convoys included ISIS fighters plus their families, right? But you know what? Who are they to use their families as human shields? All right? I would have attacked those damn convoys. Maybe I would have gone light. Maybe I've done as much as possible to minimize, casualties. Certainly I wouldn't have gone as hard as, I kind of envision. Example is the Highway of Death during the first Gulf War, where, you had a large amount of retreating Iraqi forces trying to escape Kuwait, heading back to Iraq with all their loot and booty and their weapons and so forth. And they were just decimated, right? And that's one thing I wrote. When I wrote the strategy and tactics for that, I wrote, you get them in a convoy in the open field, right? You whack the front, and you whack the back, right? I mean, hell, that's so obvious to do. That was done in World War II, right? You get some armored units rolling along the street, you whack the front, whack the back, right? And then you jam them up, and then you whack everything in between, all right? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science to know that, right? And that's what happened on the Highway of Death, and it worked perfectly. Well, you do the same thing here. I mean, you don't have to have A-10s rolling in. You don't have to have AC-130, Spectre gunships overhead. You could just have helicopters, all right? Apaches, all right? Blackhawks, right? And then you have some that are dedicated to the Hellfire missiles, right? You have a lot. You got the majority of them with snipers, right? A sniper with a 50 cal in there, right? You take out the first truck, you take out the last truck, right? You jam them up, right? And I mean, you can use a Hellfire in them, all right? Or you could do an engine block shot, whatever, right? You take them out, and then you have Bullhorn. You order them to surrender. Right, and they don't. Right, I mean, you try to minimize civilian casualty. I mean, the women and children. Right, try to use, sniper shots or something like that. All right, right, and then you have forces that come in and land and corral these guys. Right, I mean they have the whole thing. You have trucks standing by available to put these guys in other trucks, secure trucks, and then you take them to a prison, whatever. There's no way they should let these guys escape. And where are they going to go? They're going to retransplant into Africa, Asia, North Africa, somewhere like Libya, right? So, anyways, the whole Bush invasion greatly magnified, exponentially increased the terrorist problem, right? Now including homegrown terrorists, right? And remember, the Army War College said that it was a strategic error of the first magnitude, right? It was the ultimate recruiting campaign for Al Qaeda and whatever jihadist extremist group. The fall of the Sunni Ba'ath regime destroys the regional balance of power, destabilizing the region, especially with Maliki and his ties to Iran's Quds force. All right, and that became a big motivation for the Sunni resistance. They feared Iranian takeover of the country, and with good reason, with Maliki's direct ties to the Quds force and Iran. All right, and now there's a Syrian, Iran, Iraq Shia bloc, which exacerbates the conflict, right? I mean, here's hypothetical. So now, the prior to this, the big balance of power was a Sunni Iraq balancing a Shia Iran, right? Now that balance of power is gone. You got a Shia bloc, right? With a potential straight shot of a pipeline across here, right? I mean, Iran could probably tap in. I don't know if they'd allow them into the Trans-Anatolian pipeline coming up here, But, anyways, they could build their own pipeline here. It's going to increase. It's a threat. It's a threat to Saudi Arabia and all the Sunni oil-producing, gas-producing nations. And then that's one of the reasons why I believe Syria became such a battleground between Iran, Shias, and the Sunni here, especially Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Both of them were supplying a lot of money and weapons to the Sunnis, including al-Nusra, which is an al-Qaeda related group, and ISIS. They're supporting ISIS in Syria, right? For a while there, I think the U.S. pressured them to quit. All right. So now we have an intensified Shia-Sunni conflict. We also have Russia trying to retain Syria as a client state. I mean, Russia's got like nothing left, right? They lost all their client states in the Middle East. Right? All they got is Syria, and they sell some stuff to Iran, but Iran is not a fully dedicated client state. Iran buys stuff from other people, military weapons from other people, and then plus they have their own weapons industry. All right, Syria is pretty dedicated. Right? Plus also, Syria is the location of the only Russian naval base in the Mediterranean, so it's strategic. Right? They're desperate to hang on to Syria. Right? We flipped everything else to the U.S., including now Iraq has flipped to the U.S. They're a client state of the U.S., getting their weapons from the U.S., buying U.S. weapons. All right, so Syria proxy war, hypothetical oil pipeline, yeah, so that threatened the Sunni oil production nations. All right, so Bush's corrupt war radically increases terrorism throughout the world, forms ISIS. They get territory and resources, right? Start doing some crazy killing. Now you got to fight them, right? They're a serious threat, especially because they got the resources of a nation, right? It makes a Shia bloc, fuels more conflict, destabilizes the region. All right. So now I want to do a summary of this whole thing. And recall that this originated from a discussion of exchange theory. All right. We're talking about power in exchange. And let's see here. All right. So if you lack power in exchange, how can you turn the tables? And we focused on this fifth method, which is to create demand in the other person for a commodity that you possess. All right. In this case, you create conflict, which creates demand for weapons, which requires that they sell oil, which you regain control of the supply of oil, which means you regain control of price. right? And I went through a lot of information here. We started with, as far as the Middle East, we started with the history of the oil industry, all right, and history of U.S. involvement in the Middle East. And the first big thing we did was the Iranian coup. We overthrew the Iranian democracy and installed a dictator, all right? So that starts off, and I'll just do a quick, brief summary of some of the stuff we did. So we overthrew Iran's democracy and installed a brutal dictator. All right. We supported and fueled both sides during the Iran-Iraq War. How about that? Right. We supported our ally, which was Iraq and Saddam Hussein. We supported our enemy, which is Iran. Right. With weapons, both with intelligence. All right. We supplied material to make chemical weapons to Iraq. We supplied them all sorts of biological toxins. I mean, page after page, right? And then we gave reason to Saddam to invade Kuwait, encouraging Kuwaiti overproduction of oil. And then when he threatens Kuwait with invasion, and then he puts an army on the border, then we give 3 green light signals. I mean, why would you give green light signals ever? Let alone after he threatens to invade and then puts an army on the border. All right. And this kills OPEC. Well, both the Iran-Iraq war kills OPEC, lowers oil price. This kills OPEC for nearly a decade, lowers oil price, right? At a time when it should have been rising. Gulf War I, right, becomes bin Laden's motives for attacking on 9/11. So this war, right, which we encouraged with green lights, now becomes the background motive for bin Laden to attack us on 9/11, which gives us what? Gives us a new war on terror, right? And then after the first Gulf War, you know, they imposed the United Nations sanctions on Iraq. You can't sell oil unless you prove there's no, you know, weapons of mass destruction. So we got these inspections, these UN inspections. The U.S. plays dirty games with the WMD inspections, undermining and sabotaging them. If you remember, I hope you remember, between 1991 and 98. I mean, I can't teach it all again. Now we're doing this, right? And at the same time, as we're sabotaging, we're saying, we're promoting the belief that Saddam has them and he's lying and concealing them. At the same time, all these Iraqi kids are dying, which becomes one of bin Laden's main motives for attacking us. Right? They're dying of starvation, malnutrition, lack of medicines, right? Lack of medical care, and lied to and manipulated the U.S. public to believe that they had WMD. Then the Bush administration uses WMD, which did not exist since 1991, and the 9/11 attack, which was not done by Iraq but Al Qaeda, right? They use a bait and switch, and they manufacture the Iraq invasion war, which then destabilizes Iraq, destabilizes the Middle East, creates ISIS, exacerbates the Sunni conflict, exacerbates terrorism worldwide. You got terrorists attacking other nations now, like Great Britain and Spain. You got homegrown U.S. terrorists now. And then the neocon NGOs promote the Arab Spring, bringing chaos to the Middle East, right? You have failed states in Syria, Iraq, Libya, and they become fertile grounds for ISIS to take root and plant themselves, right? And also this increases the conflict vis-a-vis Russia, right? You know, the U.S. is going to say, oh, Russia's dirty, right? Well, Russia is dirty. They're going to do what they want. But man, we are just as dirty, if not more dirty than Russia. We do, if you're honest, right? U.S. administrations, not all of them, but they had done plenty of dirty things. I've showed you how we're the biggest warmonger nation in recent history. All the wars we fought, right? You know, a lot of what I teach is just water under the bridge. I know. If people don't retain it, it's like, what? Unbelievable. That's all they get. So have we done a lot of self-serving things in the Middle East? Right? You remember it all? Okay. Have we done a whole load of dirty dealings in the Middle East? I just reviewed some here. Have we done many things that create conflict in the Middle East? I just reviewed these here. Is there a clear and obvious pattern here? Is it repeated? Do you think it's all accidental, that we're simply making mistakes? Or are we intentionally creating conflict? The key question is creation of conflict profitable, especially conflict amongst oil-producing nations in the Middle East? If so, then the terrorists are really suckers being played by people who are more clever than they, right? The question is, how is conflict profitable? And I'll get to that in tomorrow's lecture here. All right. I mean, there's many ways it's profitable. Okay. Where are we at here? All right. So is it profitable economically? Yeah. Is it profitable politically? Sure was. It won the Republicans in 2002 election. If you recall the plan by Karl Rove and the Republican Party. Okay. Can conflict manipulate and move the masses with fear-mongering? Yeah. Can it make them suckers for a new war? Yeah. Right? Does fear-mongering work all the time? Yeah. Can conflict be profitable in and of itself? Can you make money from that? Can conflict be used to indirectly control oil prices? Especially important after 1970, that's when the U.S. reached peak production. 1971 is when we lost control of price. 1973 is when we got whacked big time by the Arab oil embargo. And then we got whacked again by the Iranian oil embargo in 79. And then we lost total control of all foreign oil by 1980. Right? That's when the last straw in the back was the Saudi Arabians taking the 100% control of Aramco, the oil company that controlled the U.S. developed oil company that controlled Saudi Arabian oil. Now, the oil being the critical for continued industrial growth, right? So, can conflict be a method to gain power in exchange, right? Can conflict be used to destroy OPEC? And don't forget, Admiral Woolsey, director of the CIA, said, OPEC's huge share of oil production, quote, increasingly threaten our economic viability, our national security, and the stability of many nations in the world as well. Destroying them should be the first priority of those in government. Okay? Is all this a means of destroying OPEC? Was OPEC destroyed in the Iran-Iraq war? Yeah. Was it destroyed in all these? All right. Now, after the Bush administration invaded Iraq, creating the insurgency, fueling the Shia-Sunni conflict, creating ISIS, then they batted a perfect 1,000 in Iraq, right? With like virtually every single major policy, right? Fueling conflict, creating chaos, right? Promoting suffering, right? Instilling hate, making for a perfect storm, right? I mean, you would think they're three stooges screw-ups, right? Right? So all of this, the U.S. invasion, I mean, I wrote this 12 years before we invaded. Maybe 13 years. Like, this is going to happen. And all this happened, right? It was totally predictable. De-Baathification, right? Utterly predictable what that's going to cause. Destruction of the Iraqi army, right? Utterly predictable. That's going to, spark the insurgency, including not securing their weapons. Destruction of Iraq, destroying their cities, destroying their economy, destroying all their infrastructure, creating chaos, right? Right? Eliminating the central authority, creating a power vacuum, unleashing sectarian civil war, right? And now the insurgency, igniting the insurgency, that's going to be urban guerrilla war. That's going to mean fighting among a lot of civilians. You're going to get a lot of civilian casualties, over 180,000 civilian deaths, right? Creates hatred, radicalizes Muslims in Iraq and around the world, increases the influx of foreign fighters. All right, right? Al-Qaeda in Iraq was next to nothing, and they're only in northern Kuwait-controlled Iraq, hiding out, right, from Saddam. Now you have an exponential increase in Al Qaeda Iraq. All these foreign fighters coming in, and they eventually morph into ISIS. This is the origin of ISIS, right? Motivated by the U.S. invasion of Iraq. You sanction and support Shia militia, fueling the insurgency, and then you put Colonel Steele as the head of American liaison. This is the guy that ran mobile training teams in El Salvador, teaching the hardcore counterinsurgency method using kidnap, torture, murder, death squads, right? And sure enough, that's what's happening to Sunni men on a daily basis. Their dead bodies, mutilated dead bodies, are being dumped in the streets. Holes drilled in them. So Bush administration also then supports al-Maliki, right? The leader of the Daw party, right? Fuels more sectarian violence. U.S. sets up detention centers, and the Bush administration, in conjunction, authorizes humiliation and torture. They're going to say, no, we didn't authorize torture. Oh, my ass. When you say nothing is torture unless they die, you're legalizing all torture. And then they exponentially increase the terrorist problem worldwide. All right, so where am I at here? Okay. So I'm saying, right, were they screw-ups? Or does it seem like, man, can you screw up this perfectly? Can you do, can you bat 1,000, right? And everything you do, you screw up, right? It almost seems like it's intentional. And if it's intentional, you wonder why. Are they milking the war? It reminds me of Vietnam, right? How the politicians screwed up that war. All right, examples of how this analysis will be attacked with distortions and lies, especially when everyone forgets, or 99.999% forget everything. They retain nothing. Only a few people retain things, right? And then there's a few sketchy things here and there, right? So if you know nothing, hey, one word reality is good as anything. One word reality is better than nothing. It's crazy, unreal, unbelievable. Say really, right? Make a mocking joke, right? Oh, that's conspiracy theory. You ask these guys, explain what a conspiracy theory is. I got to take a break. All right. Yeah, where was that? Okay. Yeah. So that's one way of doing it. This God's honest truth. One word reality is all it takes for people. They won't know jack, but they'll believe. It's enough to say unreal, unbelievable, and that's the basis of their belief. Or even conspiracy theory, right? This forms the total basis of their belief. They know zero facts, have zero intelligent analysis in their heads, all right? And then you ask them, hey, define conspiracy theory. And you know what you get? I always get, oh, well, it's, and they struggle to get one sentence. And that forms the total basis of their belief. A vague, sketchy, nebulous, ill-formed notion that they can't even explain in a full, complete sentence. All right? That's the sole basis of their belief. And then you exploit ego, self-serving bias. Right? That's how you distort things. I mean, this is fundamental human process. This is what people do all the time, to believe the crap they want to believe. And you also exploit emotions. USA, people want to be able to shout USA, USA, beat their chest, feel good about themselves. It's not about what's just. It's not about what's true. It's not about what's godly before God, right? You know what it is? It's what makes them feel good. And that is so pathetic, right? No justice, right? And then you manipulate these guys with hate, right? You get if the liars would just try to make people angry with me, so that they don't believe me, right? He's calling you stupid. He's un-American. He's unpatriotic. He's against America. Try to whip up hate, and that's going to dominate your beliefs. No facts. You don't need any facts. Mocking joke that people will say, "Oh, I'd never fall for that." It always works. All you got to do is shift focus onto a mocking joke, and that totally discredits you in people's minds. He's a joke, right? You can't believe him, right? What do he say? Well, it doesn't matter what he says, right? It's all unreal because he's a joke, right? And here's another method, right? Someone says, the liars will say, hey, he's saying that the U.S. is behind every problem in the Middle East, right? No, I'm not, right? You know, that's so easy to attack. Of course we're not behind every problem in the Middle East. So it's easy to attack. And the method here is setting up a straw man that you can knock down. So I never said, right, the U.S. is behind every problem in the Middle East. They say I said it, and then they attack what they say, attributing that to me. And then so the average person says, yeah, he's full of crap. Well, I never said it. You see how that works, right? Putting words in your mouth. All right. Now, you know, obviously we're not behind every problem in the Middle East. They create a lot of problems for themselves, but you cannot say, right, that the U.S. does not create a lot of problems in the Middle East. All right. Another straw man method here, setting up a straw man, right, is he's saying that oil and conflict determine everything in the economy. No, I'm not, right? I am saying it is significant. It is a major factor in the economy. I mean, the economy is very complex. There's a lot more to it, all right? It goes on and on, but this is a key factor. No doubt about it. So again, they're trying to set up a straw man that they can knock down and say, oh, see, he's right? And I never said this stuff. So another classic method they use is shift all focus onto the 1 week fact, right? The 1 week thing. I could have said 500 things, right? They'll try to desperately look for the 1 week thing they can, and they know people aren't going to remember jack, right? Maybe they're lucky to remember 3 things, maybe, right? Out of all that I taught, and they'll shift all focus onto that and make an attack upon that, and no one's going to fact check their lies, right? No one's going to, check their manipulation of how they're spinning this, and then they'll use that to say, see, it's all bullshit, right? They'll use that to paint the whole thing. So all the thousands of other facts are forgotten, right? And here's another thing they may say. Oh, in teaching all the bad things the U.S. did over there, he's just fueling more terrorism. He's inciting the terrorists. No, I'm not. They know all this stuff already. Just remember Bin Laden, man. He was already pissed off with all that stuff. He didn't have to take a lesson from me. This is well before I was doing this. So, not only do they know it, right? Here's the thing. If we want to stop this, well, why don't we stop what we're doing? Why don't we stop on our part, what we can control immediately? Why don't we stop inciting terrorists with all the dirty crap that we do in the Middle East? And we do a lot of dirty crap. Do not lie and deny it. All right, so, okay, why don't we start there? Stop doing the stuff, the dirty crap that pisses them off, right? And then, right, the third thing, and I think this is the biggest way of attacking terrorism, right? When you educate them, you fully educate terrorists that they are just chumps being played. They think that they're attacking the U.S. to get them to stop, to get us. They think that they're weakening us. The 9/11 attacks did not weaken us, didn't hurt us. It didn't get us to stop. If anything, it strengthened the U.S., right? It rallied the people. This is fundamental strategy. Boosting the morale of the people, right? It unified the American people, right? It boosted our economy, started the war economy. That's always a big Keynesian boost to our economy. It pulled us out of the 2001 George Bush recession there, right? We came out of it. I mean, sure, it hurt the vacation and travel industry for, maybe less than 6 months, right? But we came out booming after that. Our economy grew. And then it gave false justification for the invasion of Iraq, which the Bush administration manipulated and lied. right? And used, right? Okay. And so here, now the terrorists think that they're fighting the beast, right? Well, first of all, right, the terrorists are oversimplifying, distorting, thinking it's all America. It's not all America. It's not all Americans, right? That are doing. It's just a tiny handful of people who get power, right? You know, the same power elite that have been starting U.S. wars all throughout the 20th century. Right? I showed you that, how over and over again, they're the ones who are starting our wars. So they think they're fighting the beast? No, they're dumbasses feeding the beast. All right? That's exactly what the power elite want them to do. The big money boys profit off of terrorism, conflict, and war. Thus, the terrorists are just chumps. They're idiots doing exactly the bidding of the ruling elite. The terrorists are suckers being played. And Middle East conflict, right, is big economic benefit. It's also political benefit. All right, I'm going to stop there, and I'll leave it there because tomorrow I'm going to focus upon how the many ways that war within oil-producing Middle East countries can make money, generate money in multiple ways. All right, and I'll explain it with this. Last thing I'll do is I'll do a quick focus on Halliburton, because part of this is, you know, getting these log cap, logistics civilian augmentation program contracts, and also private military security contractor contracts, right? And Halliburton got the lion's share of them, and how, you know, it's. I mean, when I talk about how you'll just get sickened if you're an American and you don't get furious, right? Right? There's something seriously wrong with you. Okay, that's it for this lecture.